Hello everybody and welcome to another hobby cheating video. And this week we're going to talk about failure. Let's get into it.
The strict technomancer that is Vincey V. Let us get to the technique and learn it, Vincey V.
I think the perception, and certainly I place this on myself as well, when you get to a certain point, you've been painting as long as I have, teaching as long as I have, helping people out in this hobby as long as I have, that either you have yourself or that others have of you, is that you don't fail. And I'm here to dispel that myth. A while back I made a video testing out the AK markers, and I said in the video, you know, I think this would be a neat way to do like a comic book style art. And that seemed perfectly reasonable because it has more stark lines and maybe it would be good for it. So I got myself a little Starscream miniature. I've always liked Starscream. I thought he was super cool. When I was young, I loved his relationship with Megatron and all that. And I got some additional markers and I said, let's give it a try. So today we're going to watch me fail horribly at this because it really is not the right tool for this kind of job. So let's head over to the desk and let's get failing. So here's all the markers we're going to use. We'll start there. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to paint this using just markers because that was the challenge that I laid for myself. Now, let me just start by saying that's a stupid idea. I already know the limitations of the markers, that they don't work well in tight spaces and stuff like that, that they're very limited. So the idea that I would try to do this solely with markers was already dumb from the jump, but it seemed like an interesting challenge for a video. So I have all these markers. Here's Starscream. Here's what he looks like. And you know, cool model. Looked up a bunch of art. There's a couple different interpretations of Starscream over the years, but of course this is more of the like Generation 1 version of Starscream. And you know, he looks pretty accurate, so we got all the appropriate colors. And I went to work. So you know, I started out by just base coating all of it. He looks like gray and like he's not primed, but he is primed. So it's just a very flat gray that looks like the resin. So he is primed. Put the, you know, all the markers worked fine. Like everything went down exactly as I expected. I tried some new other brand acrylic markers because the first thing I realized with just the AK set was that I didn't have enough colors. A lot of the comic book colors you'd want to do are really bright and pastel. And the problem is the AK set is clearly targeted more at scale modelers and historical miniatures, and so it's got a lot more like drab colors and desaturated tones. So we got kind of a mismatch there. But I ordered this additional set. It had a ton of bright colors in it. I was like, great, no problem. We're good to go. But, you know, so I laid down a bunch of base coats. I used a mix of like the AK markers and these new markers. They both basically performed the same, honestly. Not any different. The new ones did have like their double-sideds. They have a little bit of a smaller tip on the side, but it's still got the same fat brush or pen behind it. So the first thing I ran into while doing all this base coating, and you're going to see it as we're going through all this footage, is that I keep striking somewhere else while I'm trying to get paint onto something. Like I'll be trying to get paint on the torso and I'll hit the arm because I'm trying to work in like a very small spot that the marker is just like too fat for to control easily. This should have been a warning to me right out of the gate, okay? But it wasn't. I kept going. I said, you know what? It's fine. Just lay back down the other marker right over the top once it's dry, and we're good to go. And sure, it worked. It worked. It was fine. Like I could easily clean up any mistake I made. Wasn't the end of the world. Even when painting, I normally make mistakes sometimes, so that's no big deal. Thought, it's just a little harder, but what could go wrong? Okay. So you know, I worked, got all the different colors on everything, found something that I thought looked like basically like a low mid-tone or something of that nature. And once I was kind of happy and had all of these different base tones down, you can see how Starscream's slowly coming together. It's funny because the very first layer looked like it did basically nothing, but it was just sort of a nice blue-gray that I thought looked a lot like how they often portray Starscream with like his sort of cold white sections or whatever. And I got the reds, the blues, all of that down, you know, got his helmet colored, you know, those kinds of things. The hardest part, honestly, was trying to do the little wing lines. He has little wing lines on him, and you'll see that in the footage where it's just like, it's very, very difficult because it's actually really hard to draw a perfectly straight line with these markers, especially on a miniature. Like, it's much easier to draw a straight line on a piece of paper when you have it flat and flush against something. holding the thing up in the air and then trying to draw a perfectly straight line with a pen on it is actually, I found, really challenging. But again, just went back, cleaned up the edges, all of that. Okay, that's fine. So there we go. We got him all base coated. It was a long road, wasn't easy, but we got there. All right, so next up was, for me, I was like, okay, well, let's do some panel lining. That's easy. Now, I want to stick with the marker theme. So I thought, okay, we'll pull out my old friends here, the Micron pens. Now I have two different sizes of Micron pens. The first one is a 005, and then I also have an 03. The 005 is obviously the much smaller one. That seemed like the right answer at first, but these recesses they're like just shallow enough to be hard to trace, but also deep enough that the little pen can't get in there. And I found that like trying to write with it, it kept drying, it kept like not leaving anything on. And then I'd have to like swirl it around on a piece of paper a whole bunch, try to get ink flowing again, and it was just like taking forever. So I said, okay, well, it's comic book style. We can be a little more bold with our lines, right? Like lines in comic books are usually pretty bold things. So we'll use the 03. And that worked better for the most part. These recesses on this model were not super strong, so it was a little difficult. But nonetheless, it worked out okay. So I basically work my way around the model. Yet again, it's actually hard because like on the 3D surface, it didn't always exactly line up to where you'd want it to. Especially again, when I'm tracing those little wing lines, it would like jump out of the recess and make a little line, but we can paint over that later. So it was a lengthy process, but we did get all of the black lines on there. And I will say, obviously, as you would expect, it does make a big difference. Like, obviously, the black lines are pretty essential to the comic book style in general. So once I got that done, now we come to the actual comic book style thing, right? Like the heavy black lining is, I suppose, probably step one, but step two is obviously you got to have these sort of strong strikes of color and light and shadow. The issue that I immediately ran into was, and this is where the marker thing comes back to bite us, is one, both making sure that I can use the marker in that place, because now I'm dealing with like everything's been base coated, and there's so many areas of the model I like can't really effectively get the marker into. And then two, you need a certain amount of like jump in the light to make it comic book style, right? Like what I mean is there'll be a clear delineation between the light and the shadow, but it's usually not that bright. So as you can see, I'm going through here on the white side of like all of those things where I use kind of a deck tan and then eventually an actual white, you can see that like it doesn't look that much different from the side. Like there's not that much of a color shift. Whereas on the arms where it's blue and then I end up using the turquoise, it's way more of a color shift, right? And I have to do that just because I don't have another marker that's in between those two. It's the same with the red, right? Like what I end up trying to do with the red is using blood red, like I use some of the speed paint markers from Army Painter as well, but they're more transparent. I was using it just to create saturation and brightness, but then it makes the surface really slick and shiny all at the same time. So I didn't have like a really effective way to keep balancing the highlights and the shadows. Like generally on a model, even when painted in a comic book style, you would expect the delta between the highlights and the shadows to be universal regardless of the color. So like the jump here from the blue, the royal blue, to the turquoise is really high. It's like super strong. Whereas the jump from, like the grayish blue up to the white on top is really weak. So it makes the model feel strange because I don't have a universal lighting scheme. So I thought, okay, well maybe I can correct and take it down. So I grabbed like the speed paint gray marker and tried to then like just use it as a shadow tone. The problem is the speed paint gray being really transparent is just like really streaky, okay? And it just does not look right at all. And I didn't have another like middle step gray to use there. That was kind of like my darkest color I had. So it looks bad. Like is the short answer there is what ends up happening, because What you see here at this stage is sort of the culmination of all of the different marker challenges coming together. I don't have fine control of the coloration, the value. I don't have fine control of its placement, and like even throughout while I was doing this step again, I would keep getting strikes like on, the marker would like errantly hit another part of it, and then it's messed up, and then I got to go back and clean it up with the old marker and everything like that. And I was trying to be really, really careful, but I could not be careful enough because, I mean, Starscream's a pretty open model. That's one of the reasons I picked him, but he's a robot with boxy parts. Like, he has some recesses under his arms and stuff like that. In between his wings and his arms was a special nightmare. So, needless to say, so you've got that problem, and then as well, you just have the challenge of it's hard to be very precise, right? And the comic book style, you want those like smooth, clean, precise applications of the color, and that's really not what you get here. There's a couple of elements on him, as you're looking at him here as we get toward the end, that I think work better than some of the other areas. Ultimately, I don't think that... I think, like, some of the areas of the leg, where I was able to, like, hardly work the green in there, or the gray in there, like, under his knees and stuff, I think that looks okay. I think the little parts on the bottom of his shins, I think that looks okay, like, as the light into shadow transition. I think that's not as bad. There's a couple of things I'm like, okay, but there was just no way I could do his face with the marker, so that was just out of the question. So, ultimately, here's how he looks at the end of the whole process, using just markers, right? Like, no paintbrushes, no paints. And the answer is, it looks like a 5-year-old painted it, and that's not great. That doesn't make me feel good. It's a failure. It's simple. We can say that. But it was a good teaching lesson. Because, one, I use these markers actually quite a bit in my regular painting process. But it's not to paint the whole model, right? So when I get them out to use it, I'll be like, oh, I need to base coat this cloak red real quick. I'll just grab one of the reds and just like, bing, bing, bang, slap it down. I find it really fast. I just like rock the marker sideways, slap it on, it's easy. Or like as a base coat for some metal things on a model. Their base, the AK Real Colors metal colors, in the pens are actually really nice as a base tone. They work pretty great. High opacity, good shine, nice for doing later work, and very easy to work with. Stuff like that, I have found these things to have a good use for. Trying to do a whole model, even in this comic book style, is just absolutely like a pathway to suffering, okay? So, this did not work. It was an experiment, and we failed. And that's all right, because in science, experimentation teaches us things. Failure is just as important, right? I tried 1,000 different ways to invent the light bulb and failed until I until I found the one that worked, or whatever the quote is, right? For medicine. So here's what I'll say. What I want you to do is stay tuned. Come back in a little while. I don't know if it'll be next week or the week after, but pretty soon here. We're going to do another comic book style paint. And we're going to do it properly. I'll use the markers a little bit where they're good, and I'll use paint and brushes a lot. And we're going to actually do a real tutorial on how to paint in a comic style. So, stay tuned for that. If you liked this video, well then what's wrong with you? Why do you like me suffering? No, I'm just kidding. If you liked it, hit like. Subscribe for new hobby cheating. We have videos here every Saturday. Most of them actually contain lessons where I'm successful at imparting information and knowledge to you. If you want to support the channel and help me in experiments like this, there's lots of ways you can do so. Down in the description, there's affiliate links where you can pick up all your hobby supplies. Doesn't cost you anything extra. In fact, it usually saves you money. There's, of course, my other podcasts. There's Fireball the Gazebo, my RPG podcast with Ninjon, and there's Snarlcast, my indie wargame podcast with Uncle Adam. Check both of those out. Give them a sub. Give them a listen. We would really love it if you have interest in those two subjects. And of course, there's the games I make with Uncle Adam. Our newest Snarl issue will be coming out very soon, so check that out. It's got a really awesome new game in it. And, of course, there is our Patreon, focused on review and feedback and taking your next step on your hobby journey. We'd love to have you as part of the community. As always, though, I thank you so much for watching this one. I thank you so much for staying with me, even as I sometimes try things and fail. I really do appreciate it. And as always, we'll see you next time.